Well, this is a long overdue video. Today we're going to talk about shows that never got DVD releases. Yes, DVDs and Blu-rays are still a thing, and while I do love streaming services like Netflix and Hulu, and even on YouTube when they post official stuff on there, the problem is, even nowadays, streaming services are still not very reliable. I still get lag when I use Netflix, and even when they do post stuff that we haven't seen in a while, there's never really any guarantee to it, because most of the time it's only up there temporarily, and in some cases, they never post the whole thing. And in the case with YouTube, while it is really nice that every once in a while a company will officially release something on YouTube, most of the time it's usually a fan or a group of fans that sort of pooled their footage together from old DVD and VHS rips of stuff that's rare and you don't find very often. And a lot of times, of course, it usually gets taken down. And it's unfortunate that a lot of companies seem reluctant to release their stuff on DVD nowadays. I know Disney very rarely releases any of its TV shows on DVD. Cartoon Network will usually do it, but sometimes it'll take them a while. However, Nickelodeon is happy to release all of their stuff on DVD. And I don't mean just the Nicktoons, but a lot of their TV shows from the 90s also got DVD releases. Although there are still a few things they haven't released yet. Still waiting on that Space Cases DVD, Nickelodeon. I got $20 with your name on it, you just gotta deliver. And even though, for some reason, Disney doesn't like to release their TV shows on DVD, occasionally they do come through for us. And recently it was announced that Gravity Falls is getting a full DVD and Blu-ray release, which is one of the reasons I decided to make this video. But in addition to that, there was another DVD release not too long before this, Mighty Orbots, which was a show I reviewed on Cartoon Clip Show quite some time ago. And one of the points I wanted to make in that video was that this show never got an official DVD release, and I felt it really deserved one. But then I suddenly realized that there were several instances where I reviewed something on Cartoon Clip Show that wasn't available on DVD, and then not long after the video came out, it was announced that it was getting a DVD release. It happened with Robot Carnival when I did that April Fool's video for that one, and it also happened with Twice Upon a Time. I reviewed the show, and after a few months or even a year or so, a DVD got released of each of those. So maybe I have some kind of superpower, some kind of divine ability to complain about something not getting a DVD release, and then after a period of time, it finally does. Which is another reason why I wanted to make this video, so I'm going to talk about my top 5 animated series that never got a proper DVD release. But before we get into that, I do have quite a few honorable mentions I'd like to bring up. These are shows that got DVD releases, but were left incomplete and with no sign that they're ever going to be continued. First up, Men in Black the Animated Series. Season 1 was released in 2012, and there's no word if they're ever going to release the rest of the series. Next up, The Secret Saturdays. I used to really like this show, but unfortunately only 10 episodes total were released over 2 volumes of DVDs. And this was back in 2009, and there's no word if we're ever going to get the rest of it. Class of the Titans. I did a Cartoon Clip Show on this show as well, and I felt it was very underrated, and unfortunately only the first part of Season 1 ever got a DVD release, and this was back in 2008. Monster Force. This was another show I did a Cartoon Clip Show episode on not too long ago, and I felt like it was an okay show. It's something really fun to watch on Halloween. Unfortunately, only 7 of the 13 episodes were ever released on DVD, and this was back in 2009. Exo Squad. This is one of the big ones. Only Season 1 was ever released on DVD in 2009, and there's still no word on Season 2. Generator Rex. Unfortunately, I don't have this one, but only 9 episodes were ever released of the series, and this was back in 2010. You know, I'm beginning to think that 2008 to 2012 was not a good time for DVD releases. Going back to Disney, a lot of the Disney afternoon cartoons never got full releases. One of the more infamous ones is The Adventures of the Gummy Bears, which got seasons 1, 2, and 3 in a nice little 3-disc set here. I do like when they put multiple seasons on one package like this. Unfortunately, the other seasons never got a release. Finally, and probably the most interesting one, is Jackie Chan Adventures. Episodes 1 through 9 were released on DVD in the year 2000, across 3 volumes, and we never got a full season 1 release. However, the UK got a full season 1 release, and then in the US they released a complete season 2. What kind of sense does that make? How do you release a full season 2 without a full season 1? Plus there's still 3 seasons that never got released. I really don't understand how this happens. Alright, let's get to the actual list now. So these shows are not really in any particular order. I'm just reading them off as I wrote them down. And they're shows that either never got a DVD release or got a very, very, very limited DVD release. Number 5, and easily the most obscure one on this list, Spartacus and the Sun Beneath the Sea. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of you haven't heard of this one. It's an old French cartoon that aired on Nickelodeon during its early days. In the early days of Nickelodeon, they tried to get a bunch of European and other foreign shows to, fill their airways until they got some other stuff to show. This aired alongside like David the Gnome and Mysterious Cities of Gold and Adventures of the Little Prince and stuff like that. This is kind of a weird show. I found quite a few episodes on YouTube. Unfortunately, a lot of the English episodes, including the first episode, seem to be missing. I haven't checked recently. Maybe that changed. But this show was it's like fascinatingly weird. And it's one of those shows I really want to look at again, and I might want to do a cartoon clip show on it. And unfortunately, that's not going to happen unless we get an actual release in English. I believe it did get a release in France, but unfortunately America never saw a DVD release of it, which I find interesting because this show kind of spawned a meme. There's an episode where they're being chased by pirates, and the pirates have this musical number. I believe the song is called like Pirates on the High Sea or something like that, and I've seen lots and lots of parodies of that on YouTube. So I do know a lot of people have to have known about this show. But hopefully one day we'll get to see this show in all of its weird glory. Until then, look up the theme song to this show. It's awesome. Number 4 is Mighty Max, which did get a few VHS releases, I believe, but it's never gotten a full DVD release, and I'm kind of shocked at that. This was a really cool, like, adventure show, and I remember it pushed the envelope pretty heavily. Like, they had zombies and all kinds of crazy stuff in the show. Like, people got killed in the show, if I remember correctly. And I remember Tim Curry was the bad guy. He was Skullmaster. And I remember a lot of his line reads that were awesome. It was also kind of scary, too, because I remember there was an episode where, like, these zombies were chasing after Max, and they were invincible, and, like, nowhere in the world he went to was safe. Everywhere he went, they would always be there. So he had to trick them into going through a portal that brought them down to the Marianas Trench at the bottom of the ocean. And that basically bought him a few months of time, but unfortunately it didn't get rid of him. And I believe in one of the following episodes he was having a nightmare about this, and it was really cool. Like, I really liked this show. It had cool side characters too, like Norman, the big sword-wielding guy that helped out Max. And Tony Jay was Virgil, and he's always great. Unfortunately, though, I didn't really care much for Rob Paulsen as the voice of Max. It's not too bad, but I feel like maybe someone with a much younger voice could have did the character a little bit better. But regardless, Mighty Max was a really fun show, and hopefully we get a DVD release of that someday. Number 3 is Peter Pan and the Pirates. This show got a limited DVD release in the UK and I think a few VHS releases, but unfortunately the complete series has never been released. I remember really, really liking this show. It was really cool seeing the Peter Pan mythos expanded upon for those of us that were only familiar with the Disney movie at the time. And of course, once again, Tim Curry was the villain. He was the voice of Captain Hook. And as usual, he was great. I remember this show dealing with a lot of deep issues too, like dealing with a lost childhood, which is kind of crazy for a kid's show. And I believe this was one of the first instances I remember of having empathy for a bad guy. Before this, the villains were always the villains. There wasn't much explanation to it, but there were moments where I genuinely felt bad for some of the villains in this show. Unfortunately, the full title of this show is Fox's Peter Pan and the Pirates. It was, I believe, made by Fox Studios, which recently was bought out by Disney. I'm not really sure if this show was part of that buyout, but if Disney has its hands on it right now, we're more than likely never going to see it again because, well, they have their own Peter Pan, and why would they release a different Peter Pan? As usual, Disney is hoarding media that people really want to see again, and we'll probably never see it again. Number 2 is The Legend of Calamity Jane, probably the second most obscure pick on this list. This was a show that aired, I believe, on the WB in the 90s. It kind of came out in between Batman the Animated Series and Superman the Animated Series. Unfortunately, it was pulled from American television after, I think, 3 episodes. It got released in other countries, but America did not see much of it. Now, the reason for this is still kind of up in the air, but the most popular belief is it was deemed too violent for children, which I find strange because I do remember seeing quite a bit of this show, and I don't really think it's much more violent than anything you saw in Batman or Superman. I haven't watched the whole thing, but it is a really good show, and I do know that it has amassed kind of a cult following over the years, so hopefully one day we can get this one on DVD for sure. And finally, number 1, Wander Over Yonder. I feel like this one's appropriate considering that Gravity Falls just recently got its DVD announcement. This was such a pleasant and funny show, and I really don't like the fact that Disney kind of just canceled it out of the blue and pretty much removed it from television. I think they do play it every now and then, but we very rarely hear anything about it. I mean, they rerun the hell out of Phineas and Ferb and Gravity Falls, but Wander barely gets a mention nowadays. But if Gravity Falls can finally get a DVD release, there might be hope for this one. So there are my top 5 picks of animated series that need a DVD release. I know there are a lot of other shows out there that either never got released or got incomplete releases. So if you know of any other shows, leave a comment below and let me know what they are. My name is Rob, and now that I've made this video, let's see how many of these shows actually get a DVD release now.